So the ELUV, which is the Electric Landing Utility Vessel, is our current kind of headline project that we're one of the headline projects that we're involved with. So this is essentially a landing utility vessel, which is a proven hull that we already manufacture and produce, and is already in operation at numerous sites across country. But the key addition being the E at the start, so the electric. So this will be the UK's first fully electric workboat, and will be built between our Scottish and our Devon-based sites, with components based being manufactured at the new site. And it's going to be trialled in the Shetland Isles. There's a route between an island community called Papastour and mainland or Shetland side called West Firth. So that's a ferry route just now that's operated by Shetland Islands Council, and the trial will last for 4 weeks in the spring of 2025, and will be the first of its kind. The vessel is fully electric. It is has a sort of shore-based power brain, a shore-based power unit that charges the vessel, but can also be carried on the vessel to extend the range and to sort of kind of reimagine some of the possibilities of the vessel, because it is a trial, and it will be a trial in that sense for a ferry application, but it's based on a workboat design. So it really, the possibilities are quite exciting for onward application across things like aquaculture, maybe rural communities, some of the kind of freight infrastructure network that are trying to modernize and move. But the excitement is a kind of electrification, and within the maritime sector, this is new and kind of bold new ground. And we have a chance to lead from the front, so it's really exciting for us. There's a lot of newness. So we've just the whole project has been made possible through the government's Clean Maritime Demonstration competition, the third round of that, CMDC3. So we were successful in securing £6 million worth of funding from that. So we've just kind of come out of the success of that application, so it's quite early days. The announcement of that funding just made last month, so we are now kind of moving into the design phase, and we've kind of got a period of refinement of the existing design for the intended application. But the whole project wouldn't have been possible without the government funding. As part of that newness, we're working closely with the MCA, and the innovation of the project has really been noted, and we're working with the MCA with the intended end purpose of the creation of something of a blueprint for the rest of the industry to follow, because there's going to be a lot of learning, a lot of new ground covered, and we've got a chance to record that and refine that, and offer something of a kind of map for future projects and for the industry as a whole to follow, which is really exciting for us. It's very exciting for Devon, exciting for Scotland, but UK as a whole. So we've got a real chance to lead from the front with this one project.
Well, you mentioned about rural communities and different applications. I appreciate you're at the trial phase, but what kind of markets would you imagine would be interested in this if the trials go the way you hope?
It's interesting that we're trialling on Shetland. Shetland, for those that haven't been, is a phenomenal, amazing part of the country, beautiful, a really strong, robust community, and it's a community of communities. So the Shetland Islands, it's a collection of islands, and they utterly depend on their civil infrastructure for their connection with one another, for the distribution of goods, and their very way of life. A lot of that civil infrastructure is physical, so there's been a fantastic kind of bridge network steadily grown throughout the last however many number of years, but also there's a number of ferry routes that still serve some of the more outlying islands where it's just not feasible to consider a physical connection. So looking ahead to an option that safeguards those connections within the sort of zero emissions future is utterly vital as far as those communities and those seeking to serve those communities are concerned. Some of these vessels are becoming quite old. They're well serviced and well maintained, but vessels get old, and so to look ahead to a newer option, and particularly a technology that gives access to a very bright future that's not just a replacement of an old fossil fueled vessel. It's something that really points towards sustainability. So looking ahead to the kind of onward applications, if this trial is successful, there are numerous similar locations throughout Scotland, particularly along the west coast, where there are similar communities that depend on a water connection, a vessel connection to connect them to the mainland and to mainland communities and all the services that they source from the communities, from the mainland. Sorry, but beyond that, within more of a kind of commercial workboat capacity, we do a lot in the aquaculture sector. This is very interesting for that sector around fish farming. Depend on workboats. There's a vast fleet of similar scaled vessels, even just along the west coast, that would be really interested if they could see an example of this technology robustly proved, that is going to evolve and improve with further innovations over time. They'd be very interested in that as an onward application. As a sector as a whole, they are looking to modernise, move with the times, and lead the way as much as they can as well. So that's our kind of our focus, but we're also really interested in what comes out as this project unfolds, and getting the word out, speaking to yourself is a really important part of that, because we're quite excited for those applications that we're maybe not aware of, or that we hadn't quite seen the connection with before, and we'd love to chat to anybody that has an idea or has a bit of an inspiration from having started to kind of scratch into our project.
Do you have an idea of cost? Because I've seen that if we go to electric, one of the selling points would be it could be potentially cheaper, obviously, depending on the route and the use. But do you have a kind of rough ballpark of why this, apart from the environmental reasons, would be such a good switch for businesses and for ferries and for councils?
The question of cost is an interesting one in the sustainability discussion, because we firmly believe you can't put a cost on safeguarding the future of our planet, and that's our focus. And we recognise that as innovations come, and as we have to investigate and trial and experiment, that there is a cost, there is an associated cost with that. Sometimes it will be higher and more painful than maintaining the status quo, but our payoff, if you're talking in those terms, is what that leads us to. So regardless of the cost of new infrastructure, of new technologies, and of new processes, and indeed of the adoption phase, we see the longer term payoff as being immeasurably worthwhile once we're all kind of agreed on this journey together. So it's perhaps not the answer that you're looking for, but that's our commitment, and that's why we involve ourselves in funding rounds with the government. That's why we work closely with the government, and why we're so grateful that the government are investing in these kinds of projects, because we see the cost that is required in order to get to the final payoff, and we really can't we can't stress how important the government's commitment within CMDC3 is to this, because without that kind of funding and an initial support to an experimental and kind of innovating project like ours, we'll never get further down the road. We'll never be able to then refine our processes and reduce those costs in order for it to be much more applicable and adoptable by the kind of wider industry.